says it's all hands, it is and was voluntary. If you didn't want to do it, you just didn't do it. You got a lot of heat, I'll be honest with you, but you didn't have to do it. Next reference, Traditions and Tales of the Old Navy. Crossing the line. How is that in the back? Is that too loud or is it good? All right, thank you. When a ship crosses the equator, all those aboard who are doing so for the first time are known as pollywogs. They are initiated into the ancient order of the deep by shellbacks, those who have crossed before. The ceremony has its origins long ago, and such initiations were held when ships sailed south across the 30th parallel of latitude, which is Tropic of Cancer. And we're going to look at the map and see why that might have been. Remember, everything always revolves around where in history? Mostly Northern Europe, right? We're not going to get into the reasons, but that's who wrote history mostly. Sailed south through the Straits of Gibraltar. It is believed that the ceremony started with the Vikings, who passed it on to the Anglo-Saxons and Normans. Okay, let's see. A crossing the line party can be very elaborate, with sailors costumed by King Neptune, Davy Jones, Queen Aphrodite, and the Royal Baby. You're going to hear more about all of them soon. Royal Bears, Royal Cops, Royal Barber, Royal Chaplain, Royal Navigator, and any number of other characters. When a ship crosses the line, rank has no privileges. A senior officer who is a pollywog is initiated along with the rest. Okay. And then a golden dragon, which we already mentioned again, is just the international date line. So why did this begin? Well, I'm going to use my laser pointer before I fall off this thing again. The Tropic of Cancer, when you sailed south from Northern Europe, where were you going? You were going to the Mediterranean. That was the big trading area. So if you went past 30 degrees right here, which was the Madeira, the Canary, or the Azores, you were going further than normal to go past the entrance of the Straits of Gibraltar. So that was considered an initiation. That was something that the average sailor did not do. Okay? At that time, they also believed that if you went to the equator, and what was your ship made of at that time? This is in the Middle Ages. You'd catch on fire. They believed it was so hot that if you went to the equator, your ship would catch on fire and you'd all die. Plus, there was all sea monsters down there as well. Well, what happened? And I'm not going to get into the whole history and the big boom of exploring. Columbus went that way, and Vasco da Gama went that way. So all of a sudden, in the late 15th century and the early 16th century, sailors were going places they'd never gone before. So now we've got to have these elaborate rituals to initiate people who are going places that no sailor went before. So let's take a look at some of those. We already mentioned some with Bob. A shellback was the equator. Golden dragon, the international date line. If you've done both, you're a golden dragon. The emerald dragon, which is the rarest, I've met very few, is crossing the equator at Greenwich Mean Time, or the prime meridian, which would be right there south of Africa. Very rare. I've never met an emerald one. The Spanish Main is the Caribbean Sea. The Order of the Ditch is the Panama Canal, relatively new. The Rock is the Straits of Gibraltar, or the Pillars of Hercules, if you're familiar with that term. The Realm of the Tsar, and I do have this one. When you go through the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus from the Mediterranean into the Black Sea, you've entered the Realm of the Tsar. That was a real fun trip, if anyone sailed through that area. Straits of Magellan, or around Cape Horn. Plank owner. A plank owner is really not crossing the line, but if you're the original crew of a newly commissioned ship, you're a plank owner. Not that they use planks anymore. Blue Nose is the Arctic Circle, and somebody in the audience said that they did this on a cruise ship? Yep, okay. The Red Nose is crossing the Antarctic. And the Safari to Suez, I'm sure you can guess that one, going from the Mediterranean through the Suez Canal into the Red Sea. And the last one is a square knot sailor. What is a square knot sailor? It's someone that sailed the 7 seas. So here's the first quiz. What are the 7 seas? And oceans count.
Atlantic and Pacific.
That could be 2.
Indian. Arctic.
Okay. Any others?
Mediterranean.
Mediterranean,
Caribbean.
the Caribbean,
Black.
the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, the Baltic Sea, the North Sea, the White Sea, the Coral Sea, the Java Sea, the Arabian Sea, the Red Sea, the Sea of Japan. Well, we're going to stop right there. I came up with 28 without the use of my book. But using my traditions, the 7 seas, why stop there? There are actually 77 bodies of water around the globe referred to as a sea or an ocean. So it's myth. It's myth and legend. I've met one square knot sailor. We considered a square knot sailor somebody that has circumnavigated the globe by sea. Whether or not you started here or there, at least you started at one point and you came back to it. That guy was on a polar class icebreaker. He was a fireman on board. He did 4 years and circumnavigated the globe. And a square knot sailor has a square knot tattoo on their left wrist, and they can wear an earring in uniform. I met one in 20 years in the Coast Guard and Navy. I met one. So it's pretty rare. So now that we've got that all done, let's talk about that and that. We did that. I'm going to describe an initiation, because there isn't just one. It's really up to the shellbacks or the golden dragons or the blue noses or the red noses to decide what event is going to happen. But they all have a general theme. You're smiling. Why? You can just guess?
No, I'm just enjoying your talk.
Oh, okay. Well, a Navy ship or a Coast Guard ship at sea is very well ordered. There's lots of discipline, there's 4-hour watches, there's lookouts, there's constant checks and balances on your navigation. It's a very serious situation until you do one of these initiations. Turn the whole ship upside down and turn it into a fraternity party without the alcohol for at least 1 day, if not 2. Once it's determined that the command is going to sanction one of these events, let's say we're going to cross the equator, or I'll describe my first one. I crossed the international date line right there in the Bering Sea, but not quite the Arctic. It was still pretty cold. Okay, so we're in the Bering Sea, and we're going to cross the international date line from the west to the east. So you're going from today to tomorrow when you cross the line. Normally, if you're going from the east to the west, in order to do the initiation, you just turn the boat around and go back west. You can do that. It's just a line in the water. So we're going to cross in the west, and I've been identified as a shellback. And granted, you don't necessarily know when you leave port that you're going to cross a line because there's operational security. You're not supposed to know where you're going. Amazingly, the night before, the day before, once the shellbacks, in this case, golden dragons or shellbacks, know it's going to happen, all of a sudden, all these props and costumes that you had no idea were on the ship appear out of nowhere. And the first thing they do is they identify who's going to get initiated, who's going to do it, because it is, like I said, voluntary. And they have a people auction. You know where that's going. So the people auction, each of the golden dragons bid to get certain pollywogs for the day before to do various ridiculous things, and which usually led up to a talent show. Well, I've seen some really entertaining stuff. I mean, a guy actually brought his bagpipes on one trip, and he got up in his kilt and played the bagpipes. Where did he have this on the ship? You don't have that much room in your locker, believe me. So we do that, and then the next morning you get up feeling pretty miserable because you've been abused all the day before, and I'm not going to get into anything too rude. And we now have to get up and put on our costume for the initiation. which is putting on your uniform completely inside out. And I don't mean you wear it inside out, just turn your shirt on. I mean your socks are on the outside of your shoes, your underwear is on the outside of your pants, completely inside out. Okay? Luckily, I had the presence of mind to have a pair of coveralls. So I just had the coveralls inside out, underwear, socks, shoes, you can picture it. The other thing is you get a charge sheet, piece of paper from King Neptune, who's in charge of this whole event, telling you that, this is the stuff you have to go through, and it has to be presented to King Neptune in his court at the end of the initiation. But you're going to get wet. Some people didn't take that warning. I luckily had a really small Ziploc bag, and I folded it up. And I hid it inside of my uniform. So it was going to stay dry. Now they get you all up into the bow of the ship in what's the bosun hole. And after being sprayed down with some water from the fire hoses in the Bering Sea, what's the temperature? It's probably 30 degrees in the Bering Sea, because it was, let me think what month it was. July. That was my plaque. I was checking the date. I'll show you those later. They're going to be up on the screen. We then go up out of the hatch onto the main deck, and you have to crawl from the bow to the stern through the various events, the barbershop, the cops, the bears, the enforcers. And when I say crawl, it's not like you're crawling fast, because of the 180 people that were on the ship, probably 120 were pollywogs. So you're all going very slowly down, and if you've been on a Navy ship, what is the texture they put on the deck? Does anyone know the name of it? Non-skid. And is it sharp? And yes, it hurts. So you're on your hands and knees, and you're going down the non-skid slowly and stopping at all of the little events, the whole time being sprayed with water from the Bering Sea, from fire hoses, pretty much for a good 30 minutes. And one thing I was able to do with my good Coast Guard first aid training is, as I crawled down, I was mentally noting the symptoms of hypothermia. Absolutely. So, wow, I'm chattering. No, now I've stopped chattering. Look at my skin color. Oh, bluish green. And it was like it's separate mind. I was just, here it is. Here's the symptoms. This is totally clinical. Finally, we get through all the rituals, and there are some other things that can happen to you on the way. At the time, I did need it. I bought haircut insurance. If you don't buy haircut insurance, they shave your head. And if you're really bad, they shave your eyebrows off, which they got from the British Navy. That's a popular initiation in the Royal Navy. Another thing that you can stupidly do as a pollywog is the night before they auction off something called the Golden Fleece. Now, the Golden Fleece from mythology was a lamb's fleece. That's not what we mean at all, if you know better. It's to be fleeced. So they auction off this card saying that if you buy this the night before, you're exempt from the initiation. Just present it to King Neptune through his royal cops, and you'll just go to the head of the line, go through that, and you're done. So when they present that in the morning, on the back in really fine print, it says it expired at midnight. So what they do is they do bring you to the head of the line, and they put you in a big bucket of ice, and you sit and watch everyone else go through, and then if you can still walk because you're numb, you go to the back of the line and you go through the initiation. Now, the captain found out that we did the Golden Fleece. This was when I did the equator, when I was a Golden Dragon already. And he was a little upset, so he made us put all the money in the morale fund, which is a general fund for parties and events for the whole crew. Which, okay, Cap says it, that makes sense. All right. Finally, I'm getting close to the end of this event, and I'm still moving, although I'm not chattering, and I'm like probably down to about 90 degrees core temperature. back to that critical hypothermia game. And on the stern, before you get to King Neptune's court, there's the whale's belly, which is a huge man-made swimming pool made out of garbage bags and whatever else will hold water. And it's filled with ice and water and various vegetables and fruits. Now you get blindfolded by the royal cops, and you're told that you must jump into the whale's belly with your hands behind your back. And you have to swim around until you find, and they pick something. I had to find a carrot. So you swim around, kind of like bobbing for apples at Halloween. So I'm swimming around in ice cold water, already frozen, until I found the proper object, swam back out of the whale's belly and presented it to the royal police, and now I can actually finally face King Neptune's court. Okay? So I'm still blindfolded, and the next thing you have to do is you have King Neptune, you have the Queen Nefertiti, and yes, there are men and women on Coast Guard cutters. And then there's the royal baby, and the first thing you have to do is you have to kiss Queen Nefertiti. And you're blindfolded. But, if it's a woman, okay, we can do that. And you don't kiss Queen Nefertiti. You kiss a nasty, old, cold, dead fish. Then they take the blindfold off and show you that you kissed this horrible-looking dead fish. Next, you have to greet the royal baby, who is shirtless. And in his belly button, and it's always a guy, there's a cherry covered in all the hot sauce they can find. And you have to get the cherry out of this person's belly button and swallow it. Okay. Then you have to find your charge sheet and present it to King Neptune. Luckily, I was able to find it somewhere in that inside pocket, and it was in its Ziploc baggie, and it was still dry and was still readable. So I presented it to King Neptune. A lot of people, it just fell apart because it was wet, and it didn't cut it. So then they would have to go back into the whale's belly and get cycled through again. I didn't have to do that. Then King Neptune finally accepts you into the realm of the deep in this case, smashes in, and I say smash, is an egg on your head, really hard to the point where it hurts, and you're done. You are initiated. You are no longer a pollywog. You're now a golden dragon, shellback, golden shellback, whatever it's going to be. And the royal cops look at you and say, and you look bad at this point, what do you want to keep? And you're like, none of it. Just throw it all over the side. So you take off all your inside-out uniform and shoes and whatever else. You throw it overboard. And they don't really want to let this messy person into the ship to contaminate it, right? So there's something called a decon locker or a decontamination locker, which is a shower that you can enter from the outside of the ship in case you are outside the ship when you get nuked or biological contamination. So you can get hosed off. But it's cold water from the ocean. It's not fun. Although now you're naked and you're frozen and you're being sprayed down with cold salt water. Now you can finally go inside the ship and warm up, take a hot shower, put on real clothes, and what do? Shamefully, you go back up and you watch the rest of the people get initiated. Because now you're a shellback, whatever, you've been initiated. Another thing that happens as you crawl down the deck is you get fed various things from the ocean, and you drink various things from the ocean. Who knows what a kipper is? It's smoked cod. It's not good. It's salty. It's just horrible. And you got to eat a bunch of them. Another thing you got to drink is fish sauce. Has anyone ever cooked with fish sauce? It's like liquid anchovies. And it's fine if you cook with it because it kind of gets dissipated. But when someone sprays you with a spray bottle in your mouth, the fish sauce, whoa. And it's impossible to get that smell out of the inside of the ship for days. So that's not a good plan. Okay. That's an initiation. but there's many various on the theme. The next one I did was the equator. I was already a Golden Dragon. I'd already crossed, but we crossed on the same ship, and we crossed the equator at the international date line. And in this case, obviously the water is a lot warmer, so getting hit with a fire hose wasn't the end of the world. But one thing that they did say at the planning stage was, well, we've got a lot more women on board than we used to because the Coast Guard made a big effort to integrate. And they started saying stuff like, well, we'll have the guys eat the cherry out of the baby's belly button, but not the women. And I was like, flag on the play. Said, look, if it is not acceptable for everyone to do every part of this initiation, then we shouldn't do that. So they were like, yeah, you're right. If it's not acceptable for men and women to do it, then we'll drop it. Everything has to be equal, which was good. The bad part about this initiation is because it was so warm. Now we're south of the Gilberts. If you're familiar with where the equator and the international date line crosses, it's south of the Gilbert Islands, which is south of Kwajalein by the Marianas Trench, which is the deepest part of the Pacific. It's the deepest part of any ocean, or 7 seas for that matter. Okay, back to that. And after it was all done, because I was already a Golden Dragon, I said, well, I'll do shark watch if you guys want to have swim call. Because you've got to have a guy with a rifle watching for swimmers in the water in case any sharks appear. No, you don't shoot the shark, because that draws more sharks. And you don't shoot the person, regardless of how much the shark is eaten. You shoot in front of the shark, because what is the shark's main mean of finding prey? It's got sonar. So bullets landing in the water in front of it screw up its whole guidance system. So I went up there for a while, and we didn't see anything but some pilot whales. And they had swim call, nice and warm at the equator. And I said, okay, as soon as the first gunner's mate, because I was a gunner's mate, comes and gets done with the initiation, come up and relieve me. And I gave him my rifle and my rifle belt, and I went down to the armory. And about 10 minutes later, I hear rifle fire. Shit. I mean, I'm up on the bridge in like 3 steps from 5 decks down. There's empty brass all over the bridge wing. The gunner's mate's pointing. Everyone's climbing up the cargo nets like Godzilla's attacked in Tokyo. Oh my God, there's sharks in the water. Luckily, the coxswain in the small boat, the safety boat, literally got between the swimmers and the shark and backed the boat into the shark's mouth, and the shark bit the stern of the small boat. Luckily, everyone got on board safely. And guess what was on the movie channel on the ship that night? Well, at the time, all 3 Jaws were shown. I didn't think that was funny. 2 days later, we pulled in the Kwajalein, and the gunner's mate who had shot and another gunner's mate of mine were over at the Navy Club, because there's a very big Navy base on Kwajalein. And they were talking about this event. And these 2 hard hat divers in the Navy overheard them and said, where did your captain have swim call? And they said, and he goes, that's the Marianas Trench. Those are the most aggressive tiger sharks on the planet. They've never seen people. They have no fear of humans or boats. He was trying to serve you guys up for lunch. The only time I heard of one worse than that, and it didn't happen to me, was a guy had a swim call in the slot off Guadalcanal. Think about it. That's iron bottom sound. And the captain was like, watch out, there's sharks. But we're going to have swim call. Nobody went in the water. Who would do that? Okay, so we actually get the initiation over with. And I survived. Okay. And, oh, let's see if we can do this without this going. I got it. So here is my Golden Dragon certificate, which we scanned. And this is greetings to you from King Neptune. And now you've got to choose one, but please check all that apply. To all you sea serpents, crabs, mutineers, pirates of the Yellow Sea, and all other derelicts of the far eastern sea. That's you guys. So please, check all of it. More than one might apply. I don't know. And again, this just says that I am in the domain of the Golden Dragon, signed by the captain, says where I crossed, which was at 49 degrees, 35 minutes, 2 seconds north of the equator. And this was GM1, so I was a first class petty officer at the time. And obviously we've got some graphics. A golden dragon, go figure. The international date line, which unlike the equator is not a straight line. If you've ever been up there, it kind of moves around between Alaska and Russia. It doesn't go through because it's an international border as well. So when you go through the Bering Sea, it does all kinds of weird movement. And then we've got Davy Jones's locker here and a Coast Guard symbol. Obviously, if you got it in the Navy, it would have different symbols. But there are companies that sell these blanks. So the ship can get them, and they even made up a few. A lot of them are about land billets now. If you're in the Army, I think you can get one for going into the realm of the Arab or the nomads for going into the sandbox in Iraq or Iran. So there's a few made up ones. All right. The next one I'm the plank owner of the Coast Guard cutter Sikanak. Okay? Don't try and spell Sikanak. Don't even try it. Okay? This one, again, check all of the above that apply. To all you salts, sea lawyers, swabs, landlubbers, square knot admirals, gun deckers, and all the other assorted scavengers of the seven seas, greetings. So again, that's King Neptune calling you those things, not me. Not me. And this says that I was the original crew of the Coast Guard cutter Sikanak when it was commissioned, and that was in 1989. All right. And if you're wondering about some of the things on my uniform, this pin right here, which is called a cutterman's pin, actually designates that once you've actually got 5 years of sea time on Coast Guard cutters, you are considered a cutterman. So I have, I think, 7 years, 10 months. So I've been to sea on 3 different cutters. And so ends my presentation. So, comments, questions, sidelines? Yes?
Okay, so since rank doesn't matter as you're doing all these.
As a pollywog, you have no rank.
Right. And so who decides who plays which role? Who are the royal cops? Who is King Neptune?
Well, what we would do is we would get all of the initiates into the wardroom, which is the officer's mess, and the senior qualified person would basically do the plan. And you'd all get together probably a week before that you knew you were going to cross the line, and you would all say, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this, and that kind of thing. Like, let's say there's a ship's barber, because there's a barber shop on the ship. Well, guess who's going to be the royal barber? It's a no-brainer. Okay? But it's not written in stone.
Unless he was a pollywog.
If he's a pollywog, he doesn't stand a chance. Yeah. Yes?
So if you have a officer, captain, lieutenant commander, whatever, that's a pollywog, and they go through this treatment, how does that work? Because that could be a dangerous situation coming afterwards. They treat it differently? Or?
No. What we did is part of, and I had to study, as part of the hazing policy, part of the Royal Police's job is to make sure that nobody goes too far. They watch the initiation, they stop any behavior that's considered excessive, which could lead to something like you're describing. And there were a couple times when we were crossing the equator where as a first class petty officer, I was a royal cop, and I stopped some of the seamen and non-rates that were using this as a revenge game. And, especially on some of the officers. So yeah, there's people watching, so it doesn't get out of control. Now, I have heard to people way back when, it turned into a revenge game, especially against officers, or Jack Nastyface is a name that's given to officers by enlisted. That's a British term. When ships were coaled, when they ran on coal, and coaling, basically everyone got covered in coal dust, but not the officers, because they didn't coal. One of the games was the pollywog officer would be thrown in a coal bin until they were completely covered in coal. And then when they crossed the equator, they would scrub rudely all the coal dust or the dirt of the north off of the initiate as they went through the equator to the south. So all I'm saying is that modern initiations have been very tightly controlled now to avoid any issues like you're thinking. Yes?
What was average size ship that you were?
I was on a 110-foot patrol boat, which was, I never crossed the line on that ship. I did go through the Caribbean, but that's not an initiation. So I had the Spanish Main. But then I was on the other two, the Dallas and the Sherman, with 378 feet, which is a Hamilton-class frigate. Okay? Most Coast Guard cutters, by definition, a Coast Guard cutter is anything larger than 65 feet, but most ships that small are never going to cross a line. So pretty much if you're not on a high-endurance cutter like I was on, you're not going to do any of these. And one of the reasons that these are initiations, and let me get back to the world map, is you're crossing a line or you're sailing somewhere where the average sailor is never going to go. Okay, so that's why it's something special. Most people in the Coast Guard are not going to cross the equator unless you're on a really big cutter. And that's why it's something different. The Navy, I've talked to people in the Navy, and they have similar initiations. I'm sure there's some retired Navy in the room that may have gone through one of these initiations. And which ones did you go through, sir? Which initiations did you go through? Oh, you're an emerald shellback. Well, now I've met two. Okay. Yeah, that. I never even heard of that one. Yeah. I had another one. I had some surprises. I was talking about this, and and you guys know what a challenge coin is? A challenge coin. If you don't, it's a specially made coin that's made up by individual units, and they give it to you as a special. You have a challenge coin with you. Okay, you don't owe me any money at the end of this presentation. But if you're asked at certain things, if you have a challenge coin from the Chiefs Association or this, that, the other thing, it can get you out of a lot of grief. Well, I was talking about, this guy showed me a challenge coin, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, you're with the agency. It was a spy challenge coin from the CIA. It's like, oh my God. I'm probably not even supposed to look at this. So, but yeah, I had never heard of that one. So, but yeah, it's something out of the ordinary. I mean, if you go around Cape Horn, and you can do it as a tourist now, okay? But if you have gone Straits of Magellan around Cape Horn, in most of the southern ports of England, you will never be able to buy a drink. You drink free for the rest of your life in Southampton and Portsmouth, which probably wasn't good. It probably didn't help your longevity. But if you're a square knot sailor, there's various places where you can't buy a drink. It's always on the house. So there's certain privileges to having gone through these events. Yes?
Where did the name of your ship, that weirdness, where did it come
The Sitkinak?
Yes.
It means Goat Island in Alaskan. It's in the Alaskan Islands.
You know what name was
It's Unimac. I think it's one of the Native American tribes, and it actually means the island of goats. The Sitkinak, because Anak is an island, and I assume, so what they did is it was an island that was uninhabited where they herded goats. And yes, I learned to spell it fairly quickly, because everyone would say, how do you spell that? But yeah, that was the 110-foot island class I was on. And I don't believe that ship still exists. I think it reached its useful life and got cut up. The Dallas, which I was on out of Charleston, went to the Philippines. And I believe the Sherman is still in service. So they're still around. Any other?
What do they do on submarines?
Same thing, only they eat better. No, they do. I mean, it doesn't say you have to cross the line on the surface. You can cross a line underneath. the surface of the water, sure. I don't think this applies to aircraft, though.
They probably don't know swim.
Yeah.
Any other questions? David, I just. I want to thank David for his presentation. I want to also thank him for his service and thank him for all that the Coast Guard does. You know, most of the military services, when they defend our country, do it en masse. They have a huge unit that does it, a huge number of Navy people or Marines or Army or Air Force that goes, and therefore everybody knows about the operation. The Coast Guard does operations that are equally as important to our security, but they're such small operations, doing one-on-one, one ship on one ship, etc., that happen all the time, all around the coast of the United States, that they don't get the publicity that the other services do. But it's every bit as important of a service.
Okay.
And we thank you for the part that you played in keeping us safe. Let's give him another hand.
All right, so to conclude, I'm going to plug our museum. Bill Klein here and his wife are here. I volunteer now. I used to volunteer at Patriots Point, as you heard. I volunteer now at a museum over at the municipal airport. Okay, I've got some brochures. It's called the Military History Center of the Carolinas. It's by the Runway Cafe, if you're familiar with that, and Runway Park. We're in pretty much the same parking lot. It's an old butler hut from World War II that the airport was going to level, and they offered it to the club, and we're in the process of basically restoring it and making it something. There's lots of very cool stuff to look at, including one of my old uniforms. Not this one. Okay. We've got some really unique stuff in there. We are children friendly. There's a police touch table. Actually, there's 3. The kids can put on uniforms. They can sit in a Jeep for a photo op. They have a blast. So yeah, they can play in the park. When it gets too hot, come on down to the museum. It's free. It's open on Saturdays and Sundays from 12 to 4, and then on holidays, but check. Okay. And I've got cards. I've got some brochures. So if you're interested in coming to visit or maybe even join, that would be great. I'll have these available after this presentation. What else do we want to talk about with that, Bill? Anything?
We'd love for everybody to come out, and I think you'll be surprised at what we have from the Spanish-American War up through today. We've got a landing cannon, a naval landing cannon, a 3-inch naval landing cannon we got from Patriots Point.
Now, we didn't want to duplicate Civil War or Revolutionary War because there's so many other exhibits here in Greenville and in Simpsonville. So we start with the Spanish-American War. If you didn't realize it, there was a military army camp where Haywood Mall is that trained people to go to the Spanish-American War. Yes, and we've got an original picture of some of those graduates on display.
And uniforms.
And uniformed items, yes.
Yeah.
So Greenville is definitely at the heart of the beginning of that museum. Also, and you gotta look for it or I'll show it to you. One of the coolest things we have is we have a gas mask for a dog. If you think kids aren't intrigued by that, you're wrong, or grandkids, we'd love to have them. We're reaching out to veterans, obviously, which is free, so please come on down. And if you want to make a donation, that's appreciated, but it's definitely free. So, that's that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks very much.
Now I'm going to turn the mic off.